in Tucson. Welcome to the Authors Table Dinner at America's Best Book Festival. I'm Steve Alley, chairman of the festival's executive board. On behalf of the Tucson Festival of Books, the executive board, the steering committee, and its more than 2,000 volunteers, we are glad you're here to join us celebrating all forms of literature. Thanks for coming tonight. The Tucson Festival of Books is the largest nonprofit book festival in the country. Moreover, if you talk to authors that have been to the festival, I think they'll tell you this is the best operated, author-centric festival anywhere, and it keeps getting better. To our authors who make TFOB the literary bestseller, we're delighted to have you with us this weekend. You are all rock stars in Tucson and are truly among friends and fans. We hope you enjoy the festival as much as we enjoy having you. And to the book lovers who support this educational community experience, your ongoing involvement, passion, and investment for the written word ensures that Tucson is the city that reads, and TFOB is the greatest never-ending story. Over the 13 years, the festival has hosted over 5,300 authors, participating in more than 4,250 presentations. This year, we're excited to present another incredible list of author sessions, exhibitors, and entertainment, and the best part is, except for tonight, it's all free. The festival wants to acknowledge a very extraordinary person that will be at the festival to tell her story. Tova Friedman was one of the youngest people to emerge from the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp. She was 5 years old when she and her mother were sent to Auschwitz. In her own words, she says, "I am a survivor. That comes with survivor's obligation to represent 1.5 million Jewish children murdered by the Nazis. They cannot speak, so I must speak on their behalf." Although Tova was delayed in getting here tonight, she will have a session on Saturday and Sunday to discuss her memoir, Daughter of Auschwitz. What an incredible person. With us tonight to recognize an outstanding festival partner is David Cohen, treasurer of the Festival Executive Board.
Thank you all for being here. The Tucson Festival of Books is a community event in every sense of the word. Civic-minded organizations that promote literature and improve literacy in Southern Arizona strengthen the goals of the festival. Tonight it's my privilege to recognize one of those outstanding partners, the University of Arizona Press. Please give them a round of applause. I'll give a little background about the University of Arizona Press, publishing house founded in 1959 as a department of the university. It is the premier nonprofit publisher of scholarly, regional, and literary works. The press publishes the work of academics, wherever they may be, concentrating upon scholarship that reflects the special skills of the University of Arizona. They also publish general interest books in Arizona and the Southwest borderlands. Recent books by the press and featured at this year's festival are Tom Zollner's Rim to River, John P. Schaefer's Desert Jewels, Miguel Montiel and Yvonne de la Torre Montiel's World of Our Mothers, and Ted Fleming's Sonoran Desert Journeys. The press publishes about 50 books annually and has 1,700 books in print. The U of A Press disseminates ideas and knowledge of lasting value that enrich understanding, inspire curiosity, and enlighten readers. The festival is very proud of the University Press contribution to literature and education. And now I'd like to welcome University of Press Director Catherine Conrad to the stage. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine, for everything she's done. And now, back to Steve.
Thanks, David, and congratulations to the U of A Press. This is my final book festival as board chair, so before I introduce our next guest, I wanted to just take a minute to extend a couple of thank yous. First, I want to say thank you to all of our volunteers. I know you're going to hear this again tonight, but I just wanted to express on behalf of the executive board how important you all are to making this happen. And I think we should give all of our volunteers a round of applause. To Melanie Morgan and the rest of the staff at the Festival of Books, thank you so much for all your hard work in helping to get us here tonight. We really appreciate everything that you and the staff do for the festival. And to Bill and Brenda Viner, who invited me to come onto the board a few years back, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. This has been literally one of the highlights of my life. To chair an event that means so much to so many people is a true honor. I especially want to thank Brenda, who made my mom feel so welcome here every year that she came to the festival from Ohio until she passed in 2015. This was my mom's favorite weekend of the year, and I know it is for so many of us that are here tonight. So thank you to the Viners for helping to create this entire festival. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Pat Paris. Pat, you probably know, anchors the 5, 6, and 10 p.m. news for KGON. KGON, he's no stranger to Tucson and KGON 9. He's a graduate of Sabino High School. There you go. While in high school and college, he worked part-time in the KGON newsroom. His father, Jack Paris, is a former general manager of the station, and he was also an All-American track star. And he told me yesterday he used to run the 800. He's not quite as fast as he was back in the 80s when he used to run the 800, and graduated with a degree in broadcast news. He has over 30 years of broadcasting experience and has won 4 regional Emmy Awards for broadcasting excellence. Pat is married and has 2 grown children. Please welcome Pat Paris.
On air, online, on your side. You're watching KGON 9. We are on your side.
Well, I thank you. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that introduction. And I want to thank everyone for welcoming me to the Tucson Festival of Books, celebrating literacy and literature, of course. And I really want to thank Bill and Brenda Viner for thinking of me as Master of Ceremony tonight. It's such an honor. It truly is. It's one of my favorite events of the year in Tucson, and of course, it's such a privilege and an honor to be up here tonight. Now, each year, thousands of Tucsonans and visitors anxiously await the authors and festivities at this marquee event. It really is. We are especially grateful to have 400 authors for this weekend participating at the festival. Isn't that amazing? And we're really lucky because we've got about 90 of them with us tonight, and there's probably one at your table, and that's just outstanding, and we thank them. And while I'm up here, I'm going to give a shout out to my table, table 12, where my wife's at, and it's Bruce Cameron, who's a terrific author and very funny, and I want to thank them for welcoming us to the table as well. The authors, I'm sure you're happy to be here because you know this weekend you're going to see live audiences, smiling faces, you're going to get some interesting questions, but most importantly, you're probably going to sell some books, and that's a good thing. Right? There is a whole new young generation of book lovers who may experience different forms of literature. We're going to show you a cartoon on the screen right now. This cartoon captioned, "I tapped the page, but nothing happened." Now, the reality is, it doesn't matter if they just continue to read. And studies indicate that when children learn to read at an early age, they have greater general knowledge, expand their vocabulary, and attain higher levels of education. We all know this. They also tend to have improved curiosity and better concentration. Also, leisure reading has been linked to a range of good academic and professional outcomes. Mario Russo described it in these terms, quote, You don't need a lot of money to fill your home with books, and it's very hard to have a bored child when there are always books around. They say that also that private pleasure delivery system is reading, is a book, right? Which seems like a key way to think about getting kids to read. And that is why we love the Tucson Festival of Books. It's all about reading, literacy, education, and paying tribute to the writers. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce one of those writers. Please welcome Tucson's award-winning humorist, cartoonist, journalist, writer, and longtime festival participant, David Fitzsimmons, for a little comic relief.
I know you're hungry. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful high school reunion of nerds. What a lovely night. I want to tell you that after 4 decades as an internationally syndicated cartoonist and as the columnist of the Arizona Daily Star, I retired this year so I could devote myself entirely to preparing these remarks to win the heart of Linda Ronstadt. I'm going to see if this clicker works. Now, I don't have a master's degree from the U of A. Whoa, there it works. Here we are. Welcome to the Authors Table Dinner, where America's best book festival celebrates tables. And welcome to our hip little town of Tucson. You know, we've been called a hip town. That's because most of us have had our hips replaced at least twice. And now the numbers. Whoa, wait, that's not a number. That's Jack Paris. That's Pat Paris. He does look like Spock up close. Yeah, I can't resist but draw people. That was so unkind and unfair. There he is, handsome Pat Paris, who misspells his name. I hope a French citizen complains to Bill Viner. The numbers. Oh, I am a reader because I married the book buyer for the U of A bookstore, meaning I married 14 damned bookcases. Here I am, cute. The numbers. We usually count on 2,000 volunteers to shepherd you through the festival, and each and every one of those volunteers will ask you to read their memoirs and put in a good word with your publisher. Lie to them, tell them you will. This is our 13th year. All I want to say about that is when my daughter turned 13, all hell broke loose. So I'm looking forward to an exciting book festival. 5,300. Not only is that the number of bow ties owned by Bill Viner, but that's the number of authors who've participated over the years. Now this is what I thought was curious. 5,300 authors who made 4,250 presentations. That means 1,050 of you just sipped cocktails and enjoyed our sunsets. And lastly, you've all helped to raise millions for literacy. And because we are in Arizona, yes, It's so heartening to hear applause for literacy in Arizona. Arizona, where we encourage you to read banned books. Well, now, much of the evening will be devoted to what I call the Thankathon. I'm going to cut to the chase. On behalf of everybody here, I'd like to thank everybody here for being everybody here, and especially everybody here who is sponsoring this event, which everybody here is enjoying, right? Thank you. Yeah. Welcome to our wonderful book festival, an event I like to call Book Stock for Nerds. 2 days of peace, love, and paper products. These are some of the words I've overheard in past gatherings. I saw you crack the spine of that book. Kettle corn spill. I got one of Viner's bow ties. Your authors, I want to warn you. Your fans will be wearing sunscreen, camelbacks, knee pads, elbow pads, and rollerblades. Tucsonans go absolutely roller derby insane over you. And I think that's why once you've been to our book festival, you'll want to come back. Last year's festival looked like the Hajj for lovers of hardbacks. And why not? It's going to be a beautiful 70 degrees here this weekend. Although I'm not going to mention in some of the outlier counties, some school boards, it's Fahrenheit 451, you know what I'm saying? So you matter greatly. Here are a few interesting folks who are with us tonight. I saw him earlier. He's not as big as I thought he'd be. Craig Johnson, what a stud. Where are you, Craig? Author, inspired the Sheriff Walt Longmire book series. You know, Longmire is portrayed by the handsome Robert Taylor. Craig Johnson wears a cowboy hat like Robert Taylor, dreams of being mistaken for Robert Taylor. Now, Craig is described as witty, charismatic, and entertaining. Craig's sitting this out tonight because I was available for 1/10 of the price. Craig is from Wyoming, where they have giant javelina they call buffalo. Also with us tonight, Charlene Harris. Author of Dead Until Dark, which describes life in our lusty retirement communities. Her Southern Fried Vampire Mystery Series became the TV hit True Blood. Let's hear it for Charlene. Now, I do have a favorite in the group, and I gotta say, Buzz Bissinger is terrifying. Look at this man. He won the Pulitzer for Friday Night Lights. His new book is Mosquito Bowl, about the largest number of American athletes ever to die in a single battle. The Mosquito Bowl was a football game played in World War II between two regiments of Marines at Guadalcanal. The bruising and bloody game that followed became known as the Mosquito Bowl. 15 of the players in the Mosquito Bowl would die at Okinawa, which may rival the body count at the book festival between attendees fighting to see who gets in to see Linda Ronstadt and Bernie Sanders. Cara Black writes popular mysteries based on a female French private investigators in Paris, not to be confused with Pat Paris, our investigative news anchor host. The founder of Grubhub, Mike Evans, is here. And what did he order? An EG's and a burrito from Taco Bell. Wait staff, you better find out which one of these tables he's at, because he's a gazillionaire. Look for him to give you a tip to help you with that student loan debt, such as, read my book. Luis Alberto Urrea is back! Again, with another book about another relative. We talked earlier, it sounds like a wonderful book. Shame on me for making fun of it. It's always a delight to see my good friend Luis. Every year, he comes around so often, you may as well swing an endowed chair here at the U of A and teach here, vato. Eventually, man, you're gonna run out of relatives to write about. You're gonna need a day job in a sunny climate where Spanglish rules. And I could just see it, you and Noam Chomsky playing Scrabble at the student union together. 20 years from now, I expect University of Arizona President Luis Urrea will welcome Jeff Kinney to Tucson to promote his book, Diary of a Wimpy Senior in Hospice. All right, we have 7 reasons why it's a blast for our volunteers. Kettleball, kettle corn, speedballs. 2 days surrounded by books. You can smell the pulp. Half of you are high on ink already. The chance to meet a big shot author like you. Plus, our volunteers get to spend a spring weekend in Tucson's Central Park, the most beautiful campus on earth, the University of Arizona. 5, they may get to meet me and experience unforgettable disappointment. Odds are good you'll run into me here, pretending to skim literary masterpieces, speedballing kettle corn. I heard a guy walking away say to his wife, "Not what I expected. He looks like a Sun City Silver Alert crossed with a Hobbit." You'll get a chance to grab the coolest t-shirts in the world, designed by the amazing, gifted artist, Chiara Battista. Yes, shirts that years from now, appraisers on Antiques Roadshow 2035 will value at a zillion crypto coins. Or 7, you might, well, look how Tucsonans love t-shirts, right? It's our formal wear. 7 reasons you might enjoy this festival. Because you might be as lucky as I was to meet your life partner here, like I met Ellen at the book festival. He- Here's the killer pickup line I used to snare her. Wow, you read? Hey, I may be out of print, but my dust jacket's clean. First time I volunteered for this festival, it was the 1888 Book Festival. Viner sent me to the train depot to pick up a clown named Mark Twain, whatever. I was thrilled, I got to admit. Oh, Mr. Twain, on behalf of the Tucson Festival of Books, let me say welcome to Tucson. Well, he said, I'm right sorrowful to disappoint you, but Mr. Twain couldn't make it. He sends his best regards, and me in his place, Samuel Clemens. And then he said, never the twain shall meet. Hey, like I said on our honeymoon, I'm not happy unless there's a groan. You know, I'm not the first person in this valley to volunteer his time to the festival. According to the esteemed T. Fobb historian and pith helmet model, Bruce Dingus, the earliest book festival in this valley, hosted by the Hohokam in 1121, featured 3 picture rocks, roasted kettle maize, and a petroglyph signing that was canceled when the author was mauled by a cougar. The first book festival hosted by the Spaniards, La Fiesta de los Libros, was held at the base of Sentinel Peak in 1774. Back then, the A stood for Anasazi. The book festival featured one author, Presidio Comandante Neto Juan Luis Urrea Perez Barul Aguirre Romero Danilito Portillo, who moderated a panel discussion on his self-published journal, Por el amor del Dios, sácame de este infierno, which roughly translates to, for the love of God, get me out of this hellhole. His second book, A Guide to Bola Ties, was a bestseller. By then, everyone was flocking to Tucson. Every winter, where you're from, your leaves may change color. Here, in the winter, our license plates change color. Earlier this year, I spoke to saloon keeper and diarist George Hand, who at 193 years of age remembers the early years of the modern-day book festival. March 1884. Spent the night in the red light district, woke up hungover, got drunk, attended the hanging of a horse thief. Then I moseyed over to the Tucson Festival of Books, where they had great books like 50 Shades of Grey, A Guide to Sun City's Finer Hair Salons. That book festival was where I met Brenda Escalante, Gabriela Pennington, Valenzuela Viner. Brenda Escalante Gabriela Pennington Valenzuela Viner was the original founder of the Tucson Festival of Books and the great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of Brenda Viner, who, with her husband, male bow tie model Bill Viner, are the team behind the modern-day Festival of Books. Edna Brenda Escalante Gabriela Pennington Valenzuela Viner, pioneer, librarian, and frontierswoman, arrived in Tucson with her best friend, Guillermo Viner, bow tie salesman from Kansas City, in 1870, with nothing but a Conestoga wagon packed with hundreds of books, bags of kettle corn kernels, and bow ties. The rest is history, and that how did that get in there? But that's the best part of volunteering and being a participant in this wonderful book festival. The stories and the storytellers, the tales you'll be able to tell about one amazing weekend in March when you were a part of the amazing Tucson Festival of Books. And in closing, I just want to make note that we are excited and honored to have Bernie Sanders coming here. Promoting his book, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And also to have Hall of Fame singing legend, the patron saint of mariachi, Tucsonan Linda Ronstadt with us tonight. Author of Feels Like Home, a cookbook memoir. And I'm wondering, Linda, have you seen Bernie Sanders' cookbook? It's okay to be angry about too much salt in the hummus. I love that one. All right. You know, the irony of Linda Ronstadt and Bernie Sanders being here is, you know, they both wish they could go to each other's talk. I look forward to Bernie Sanders' sequel. It's okay to be angry about not being able to get in to see me because I'm so popular. The title of Linda's cookbook is Feels Like Home. And that sums up how we feel about Tucson and how we hope you all will feel about our Festival of Books. Bienvenidos a Tucson. Welcome home.
David, thank you. That was terrific. Made us all laugh. One more time for David Fitzsimmons, please. We're running just a little behind, but that's all right. Last year, returning from the pandemic, of course, we had 100,000 people, Arizonans, visitors, all coming to the two-day event, and we're expecting a much larger crowd tomorrow and Sunday, thanks to the beautiful weather and thanks to everybody being back once again. But it's not just about the attendance at the festival, it's all about the details, the authors, the volunteers, the hospitality, the venue, and the diversity. What an amazing job of creating a fabulous event that all of Arizona and the authors can be proud of. And tonight we have some people we want to recognize and thank for being here. And as we look around the room, we're going to start, I believe, over here to my left. There's our Honorable Mayor. Thank you, Regina Romero. If you could stand up. Thank you for your support, Mayor. We do appreciate it. And I believe somewhere over here to my right is Natalie Green. And Natalie is the program director of the National Book Foundation that presents the coveted National Book Awards each year. The festival, of course, is grateful to have Natalie and 10 of the 2022 National Book Award honorees with us. And we're going to show the names of those 10. If you're in attendance and you want to stand up, we would appreciate that. Let's give a round of applause to these 10 National Book Award honorees. And we always like to point these next two people out, although David already talked about one of them. But we're going to talk now about the Founders Award winners from the past. And the Founder Award winners from the past, there's two of them that have been to every single one of these Festival of Books. J.A. Jantz and Luis Alberto Urrea. Thank you very much for being back again. And last but certainly not least, we are so excited and honored to have the Hall of Fame singing legend and Tucsonan Linda Ronstadt with us tonight. Linda, along with her co-author Lawrence Dowles, will be discussing her new memoir, Feels Like Home, A Song for the Sonoran Borderlands. That'll be on Sunday right here in the ballroom at 1 o'clock. Linda, thank you so much for coming. And now, let's enjoy a short video of memorable festival moments.
I have often said to many of you in this room that the stars were aligned in this project. By partnering with the University of Arizona, the U of A bookstores, the Arizona Daily Star, we were on our way and we never looked back.
I'm so proud of Tucson because for once, you all look like one gigantic New Yorker cartoon. When do we eat? He's not funny. When will he shut up? I'm here just to hear Jance.
In 1964, they wouldn't allow me in the creative writing program because I was a girl. And so it was really wonderful in 2000 when they gave me an honorary doctorate of humane letters.
One picture is worth 1,000 words. You give me 1,000 words and I can give you the Lord's Prayer, the 23rd Psalm, the Hippocratic Oath, a sonnet by Shakespeare, the preamble to the Constitution, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the last drafts of Martin Luther King's speech to the March on Washington, and the final entry of Anne Frank's diary. You give me 1,000 words, I wouldn't trade you for any picture on earth.
Sports writer is the only occupation in journalism that I know of which is one word. It's as if the subject can't be separated from the journalist. Sports writer, one word. Everything else is two words. And it's often, or most often, it's not the stars who are the best people to write about at all. The stars are young. Nothing much has ever happened to them.
What I think this place is really about is right here tonight with us. TFOB is what it's about. All of us together, celebrating art, celebrating words, looking out for each other, and remembering we're a family.
This is before 24-hour news networks, okay? I would go upstairs, watch the 11 o'clock news, and if something struck me as funny, it would be on Weekend Update a half hour later. Right as, I didn't realize it at the time because I thought the whole world worked like that. And it was actually 2 times when I was with that show. While they were on the air doing Weekend Update, I was underneath the desk writing jokes and handing it up to them.
I came here because I was an inveterate bookworm. I'm an English major. I'm a book addict. I can't go into a bookstore without buying 3. I read all the time. It's the only thing I really want to do. In fact, I would rather be home reading tonight than to be here having to talk to you.
Books live and change as we grow, and what we get out of them continues to change as well.
Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of thought, they're all inextricably linked and essential to our way of life. And books are the affirmation of that idea. And this book festival is an affirmation of that idea.
I want to say to the writers, first and foremost, thank you for telling your stories, for giving us a way to walk through the world, for giving us a way out of no way.
This is one of the books that's coming out from Versify. This is for the unforgettable, the swift and sweet ones who hurdled history and opened a world of possible. The Muhammad Alis, the Althea Gibsons, the Jesse Owens, the Jordans and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Nana Kwames, the Wayetu Moores, the Reese Whitleys and the undiscovered. This is for the unbelievable, the we real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night is beautiful ones. This is for the underdogs and the uncertain, the unspoken but no longer untitled. This is for the undefeated. This is for you and you and you and you and you. This is for us.
It is an honor to be here before you, assembled readers, writers, booksellers, and most of all, lovers of books.
Now it's a real pleasure to welcome the Festival Steering Committee co-chairs, Lindy Mullenix and David Nix.
J.D. Salinger wrote, "What really knocks me out is a book that, when you're all done reading it, you wish that the author who wrote it was a terrific friend of yours, and you could call him or her up on the phone whenever you feel like it. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen much, and I think least of all when the author was J.D. Salinger. But the author's table dinner gives you that unique opportunity to meet and talk to your favorite authors, and it's the start of a very special literary weekend. Heather Kane and Shauna Henderson, along with their committee members, made sure the author table dinner continues to be a Tucson favorite. Great work. This literary celebration would not happen without the dedication of all of our steering committee members representing the 15 festival committees that put this on. Our executive director, Melanie Morgan, our literary consultant, Lynn Weezy Sneed, marketing director, Megan Reinhold, office coordinator, Carla Chavez, and more than 2,000 volunteers. Also, we want to recognize Chiara Bautista, the artist who designs our animal logo each year for the book festival. This year's critter is a raccoon, and if you look closely, you can see that it's actually composed of letters of the alphabet. Chiara, we love the logo and the t-shirts.
If you have never been to the festival, it's hard to imagine 400 presenting and indie authors, 295 presentations, 33 venues, 200 exhibitors, a literary circus, Western National Parks exhibits, a children's area, Science City, the Flandrau Planetarium, C-SPAN Book TV, food vendors, entertainment stages, and much more. So here's a quick look at the festival.
Our festival sponsors are really dedicated to improving our community. The University of Arizona is the ultimate partner and the perfect environment for this festival. We want to thank Dr. Robbins, Chris Kopak, and his fantastic facilities team. The U of A College of Education, the U of A bookstore staff, and many others from the campus for their continued involvement and support. The Arizona Daily Star is an exceptional media partner, and their talented team has spent countless hours producing a fabulous database, website, apps, instituting our ticketing process, publishing the festival guide, and hosting a venue on the mall. We thank Jill Jordan Spitz and her entire team.
We are very proud to have TMC Health as our presenting sponsor. They are not only committed to the festival, but to numerous community projects and causes. Be sure to see their venue as you stroll the mall. Thanks to Judy Rich, Mimi Kumler, and the entire staff of TMC Health. We also want to acknowledge Tucson Electric Power, the Stalker Foundation, U Arizona Bookstores, U Arizona Facilities Management, the Marshall Foundation, the William and Mary Ross Foundation, Pima County Public Libraries, Arizona Appliance and Home, Early Childhood Learning is Essential, as well as all the other names you have seen scrolling on the video and in your program.
And last, but certainly not least, in addition to putting on this remarkable festival, we are equally proud that during the last 13 years, the festival has provided $2,150,000 to community-based organizations to enrich literacy in Southern Arizona. That is quite an accomplishment, and we thank all of you for making that possible.
It's been great working with you, David.
Likewise, Lynn.
All right, we're back for the second half of the program. I hope you really enjoyed the dinner and visiting with some old friends and new friends. The dinner was terrific. How's Table 12 doing over there, Bruce? My wife, Amy? Table 12's doing great. Such a great time meeting all these wonderful authors. I know we have some memoir writers in the house, like Ingrid Rojas Contreras and David Ambrose. You know, writing a memoir not only takes a lot of thought, but can be stressful in some regards, especially for parents. This cartoon here, if we'd known you were going to be a writer, we would have been better parents. Probably some truth to that. Now it's my pleasure to introduce John Umanick. He's the co-founder of the Tucson Festival of Books. He's here to present the 2023 Founders Award. John?
Good evening, Tucson. How we doing out there? Everybody all right? As Charles Eliot said, books are the quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and wisest of counselors and the most patient of teachers. Joyce Carol Oates put it concisely when she said, "Reading is the sole means by which we slip involuntarily, often helplessly, into another's skin, another's voice, another's soul." Tonight we honor and acknowledge the writers participating in the Tucson Festival of Books. They are the ones who bring words and imagination to life. From Buzz Bissinger to Temple Grandin to David Marinas to Linda Sue Park, we are awed by the authors' passion, talent, and achievements. Their wit, thoughts, and ideas are a wonderful gift to us all. For those favorites like Craig Johnson, Lydia Millette, T. Jefferson Parker, Kara Black, and John Sanford, who are returning to the festival, we sincerely appreciate your support. And to newcomers like Charlene Harris, Ron Shelton, Catherine Applegate, Major Garrett, Sonora Reyes, we hope this is the first of many visits to Tucson and the Tucson Festival of Books. In 2011, the Tucson Festival of Books established the Founders Award. The award honors literary achievement that has captivated our imagination and whose body of work will be an inspiration to readers, writers, and book lovers. We continue to be inspired by the past honorees.
I think the more you write, the harder it gets, because you don't want to write the same scenes over and over. You want to keep it fresh. I'm in my 80s and I still love to write.
It's one of the pleasures of being a novelist is the capacity to go backward and forward in time and see your characters and visit them at different times of their lives.
Last time I spoke at the University of Arizona was 35 years ago, and I spoke to 22 people.
I think the whole point of my career has been about getting kids to read, and that's what I'm most proud of. All I want kids to take away from these books is the fact that you can turn to reading and just be entertained.
Maybe you've heard me tell my all-time favorite letter. This was from a boy. Dear R.L. Stine, I've read 40 of your books, and I think they're really boring.
In some way, a good book is as exciting and rewarding as anything you're ever going to do in your life.
The previous winners of the Founders Award are all iconic authors, and two of them, Elmore Leonard and Larry McMurtry, are personal heroes of mine.
People who are really writers write when their lives are imperfect, because if you're waiting for perfection, you're never going to get around to writing at all.
It's a mad world we live in a world that is mysterious, undefined, without purpose. And I try to make purpose by making art.
I don't want to know the ending. I want to find out. I mean, this is why it's so exciting to me and why I only write fiction.
Poetry has become, it's probably the most egotistical of the arts because the self is foregrounded and the self is the subject, the I.
When I was United States Poet Laureate, and I love saying that, it's a great way to start sentences.
First Latino to get the award. You know, I've watched this festival go through so many challenges. Political upheaval, ethnic problems, literacy upheavals, Jim Harrison. Jim was spectacular. So many things have happened. Weather, and here we are now.
Books and stories are a way for us to reach out into the world, to reflect, to escape. And again, I just want to say how grateful I am to receive the Founders Award. And I hope all of you stay safe and well, and that next year we can all be together again.
I always thought of myself as a writer when I was growing up. Didn't think it was so practical, that's why I ended up going to law school. But I couldn't stay being a lawyer when there were things that I wanted to do and stories that I wanted to tell.
A round of applause for our previous honorees. Tonight we are proud to present the 2023 Founders Award to Thomas Perry. Perry received a BA from Cornell University and his PhD in English literature from the University of Rochester. He has been a laborer, maintenance man, commercial fisherman, weapons mechanic, university administrator, and teacher, as well as television writer and producer. Thomas Perry is one of America's premier thriller writers. Perry has authored 30 novels, including a variety of fictional suspense, starting with The Butcher's Boy, which received a 1983 Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers of America for Best First Novel. He then launched the critically acclaimed Jane Whitefield series, including Vanishing Act, that was chosen as one of the 100 favorite mysteries of the century. Perry developed a non-series list of mysteries, including award-winning Pursuit. In The Informant, Perry brought back the hitman character first introduced in The Butcher's Boy and was awarded the Barry Award for Best Thriller. Again, in 2021, Perry earned another Barry Award for Eddie's Boy. The Old Man TV series starring Jeff Bridges is based on Perry's book of the same name. His new 2023 novel is Murder Book. Stephen King said, "The fact is, there are probably 1/2 dozen suspense writers now alive who can be depended upon to deliver high-voltage shocks, vivid, sympathetic characters, and compelling narratives each time they publish. Thomas Perry is one of them." And Robert Parker says, Thomas Perry is quite simply brilliant. For nearly 40 years, Perry has been steadily building one of the most impressive bodies of work in contemporary crime fiction. Here is a tribute to our 2023 Founders Award recipient.
I never thought that was a realistic thing for people to think of as a career. It just seemed that wasn't what people did. I didn't know any writers. I didn't know anybody who ever considered living as a, sort of earning a living as a writer. I mean, that's like earning a living going to parties or something, I sometimes feel as though I was about 25 years old and I started to sit down and write a book, and I wrote page after page after page, and then I looked up and I was old. Murder Book, which is the last one to be published, is my 30th novel. I grew up in a little town called Tonawanda, New York, which is about halfway between Buffalo and Niagara Falls along the Niagara River. My parents were both teachers. My father eventually made it to superintendent of schools in the little town where I grew up. My parents had a lot of books, and I was sort of given to understand from an early age that anything that was important that ever happened or was thought or said or anything was going to eventually turn up in one of those books. That sort of got me to the point where I thought, gee, that's really be kind of a great thing to do, to be one of the people that writes things down. It would be nice. I started writing The Butcher's Boy in about 1979, and never really at that point expected to have anything published. And so what happened was, I was just sort of surprised with it at the end of it. Read it over and I realized, hey, this might be something that somebody who isn't actually related to me by blood or marriage is going to be willing to read. So from then on, I was an author. My wife and I worked in television for about 11 years. We started on a show called Simon and Simon. Our two bosses moved to another studio. They asked us to go with them, and first one was called Sidekicks. Someone's moving behind you. Someone's picking up ground. We worked on a show called The Oldest Rookie. show called Snoop. In the case of The Old Man, seeing something actually made after writing the novel is a wonderful one. It's really a lot of fun.
Hello?
Hey kid, it's me. They found me.
Doug, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. The dogs are fine. Thought I covered the tracks. You and I were not going to be able to talk again. Remember that I love you. That I'll always love you.
I write a novel with the notion that there's no such thing as television, there's no such thing as movies. I try to write a story that a reader has never read before, and to the extent that anybody is ever going to remember anything that anyone does in this field, it'll be for things that we write that never would have existed if we didn't write them.
Unfortunately, Tom and his wife are not able to be with us tonight. Tom will receive this Native American storyteller. The storyteller holds the cultural wisdom of the people and keeps it alive for the next generation. We know Tom is very disappointed to not be here in person, but he did send this video message.
Hi. I'm sorry I can't be there in person this year, but we're having a little COVID problem in my family right now. I want to thank the founders for giving me this award. I've always felt, actually for the last 14 years, that the people who really deserve an award are the founders themselves. The thing about this award is that it has a perfect shape, really, because what it does is represent literature for what it really is in its simplest and most basic form. What writers do is sit down and tell people a story. We hope that the story will be one that they've never heard before and that will make them think about how interesting and complex human life really is. If we do a really good job, then what we hope is that somebody will be inspired to sit down and write a story of their own. Writing stories or telling stories is really one of the most basic things that human beings do. It's the way that we teach our children not to make the same dumb mistakes that we did when we were young. It's the way that we introduce ourselves to new friends. We tell each other where we came from, stories about who we are, what we've seen and heard and thought. It's also the way that our religions are expressed. Most of them are recorded in collections of stories. I've often thought that possibly the first story was told by an early human about 10 or 15 minutes after she had invented language. The reason she invented language may very well have been that she had a great story on her mind and had no other means of telling it. I'd like to thank the founders again for the award. It's a wonderful one. And I would also like to thank all of you for coming and supporting the festival for all of these years to the benefit of Tucson and also people like me who come from afar just to be part of it.
Congratulations again to Thomas Perry, our 2023 Founders Award recipient. The festival is very proud to have Tucson Medical Center as its presenting sponsor. They're a terrific asset to our community. Here tonight is Julia Strange, Vice President, External Affairs and Brand for TMC Health. Welcome, Julia.
Hello, and thanks for having me here tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Sabah Tahir. We've had a delightful dinner tonight, and very much looking forward to hearing her speak. Sabah is a former newspaper editor who grew up in Mojave Desert with her family, in her family's 18-room motel. There she spent her time devouring fantasy novels, listening to thunderous indie rock, and playing guitar and piano badly. Her #1 New York Times best-selling An Ember in the Ashes series has been translated into more than 35 languages, and the first book in the series was named one of Time's 100 best young adult books of all time. Her most recent novel, All My Rage, won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature. Recently, it also received the Prince Award and was an instant New York Times bestseller. It received 8-starred reviews and won the 2022 Boston Globe Horn Book Award for Fiction and Poetry. Please extend with me a warm desert Tucson welcome to the Tucson, Arizona.
Hi, Tucson. I want you to know that the thing that haunted me as I came up these steps was whether my dessert would be gone by the time I got back, because I was too nervous to eat it. So table 5, I expect you to defend it with your lives. I am going to talk about young people today, because I'm very, very proud to be an author for young adults. A few weeks ago, in an interview, I was asked this question. As someone whose work reaches young adults, what do you feel like we owe them? I've been publishing in the young adult book space for about 8 years, and usually I have an instinct as to which direction the answer to a question should go in. But I didn't have an immediate response for this one. It kind of stumped me, actually. And in answering it, I first had to answer many other questions, the most important of which were, why did I begin telling stories? Why do I write? What made me pick up a book as a young person? And what made that book meaningful to me throughout my life? My mom says that I started telling stories when I was a very little kid. And I remember that. I remember taking a walk with her and telling her a story of this goose until my feet were really tired. And later on, she told me she was tired too, but she wanted to know what would happen to the goose. But what I remember most clearly was actually listening to stories, my parents' stories. I remember the exact black of the desert sky, the first time my father told me the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. I remember the Santa Ana winds kicking up dust outside the motel. And when the story was over, I remember thinking, did Ali Baba thousands of years ago have to deal with sand in his eyes the way I have to? Because he lived in the desert too. The desert was an excellent place to discover story, and an even better place to get lost in them, and I don't actually remember a period of time where I didn't crave story like food. What I really craved, I realize now that I can psychoanalyze myself, was another world. I wanted to disappear into another reality because I didn't like mine very much. I was one of a very few number of brown kids in a town that, according to my history teacher, had an impeach Thurgood Marshall billboard up well into the 80s. By the time, that was the least of it. But by the time I was 6, I had the question, what are you? More than, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like so many kids who grow up to be authors, stories were salvation. But it was a specific type of story that I was drawn to. Fiction or nonfiction, fantasy, contemporary, humans, aliens, bears, whatever it was about, I wanted the characters in my stories to feel real. As a kid, of course, I didn't realize what that meant, but as a storyteller now, I understand. They had to have hopes and motivations and challenges that felt possible. And the reason why I wanted this is that I wanted to feel less alone. I wanted to know there were other souls out there like me who were scared or lonely, but who found a way through their difficulties in a way that felt possible and authentic. I didn't want to be lied to even as a little kid. I wanted truth. And I found it. When I was little, I found it in books like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and A Wrinkle in Time. When I was a teenager, in books like The Handmaid's Tale, Beloved, and The God of Small Things. And I guess it was only a matter of time before, much to my South Asian parents' disappointment, I began to tell stories and write stories myself. They wanted me to be a doctor, by the way, which was not going to happen. Sorry, Mom and Dad. So I started just kind of writing down the things that I wish I could read. And then eventually, when I got into my 20s, I started writing because I felt compelled to, because I had a story to tell. The story was about my life as a young person growing up in the Mojave Desert. When I was still in college, my father had a stroke, and as a result, my parents sold this motel where I grew up. And I was away from home when this happened. I didn't really get the closure that I, as a very emo 20-year-old, needed. And I decided that I wanted to start writing about it. So over the course of time, these scribblings resolved into a story about the tenants at this motel in the desert. But try as I might, I could not get this story to work. It felt very incomplete. I called the story Burn It Down for a very deep and profound reason, which is that I wanted to burn the motel down. I spent a couple of years working on it before realizing it was total garbage. I was trying so hard to tell the truth of my childhood, and I was failing. I wasn't ready to share it yet. But the moment of realization, the moment when I was like, I think maybe I should move on to something else, was when I talked to my mom. And I was whining to her and saying the story was so hard to write, and I didn't know what to do. And she said, stop with the story already. You love fantasy. Go write a fantasy book. And I responded by saying, Mom, if I write fantasy, no one will take me seriously. Because I was 25 and I knew everything. And my mom said, no one will take you seriously if you never finish a book, which is a classic Asian mom roast. But she had hit on something very essential, that if I wasn't ready to talk about my childhood in the Mojave Desert, perhaps there were other things I was willing to share. Things that were just as important, but that I could talk about in a different way. There's this Ursula Le Guin quote: both science fiction and fantasy offer more options. They let you think through an alternative without actually having to do it. So I decided to write about something that was close to me, but that I could look at with some distance. I began writing a book called An Ember in the Ashes, and it was inspired by my work as an editor at the Washington Post. Every night, I was reading stories out of some of the most oppressed and troubled places in the world. And it really felt like nobody cared about those places. They did not care about the Kashmiri men and boys who were being disappeared. They did not care about the insanity that was going on in Iraq or the genocide that was going on in Sudan. So ultimately, all of that went into this book, albeit reinterpreted for a Roman-inspired fantasy world: extrajudicial jailings, child soldiers, kidnappings, war crimes, but also like good things: magic, gin, adventure, falling in love, the desert. I swear it works. I began writing Ember in 2007, and to say that I didn't know what I was doing is an understatement. You can read 1,000 books and still not know how to write one, at least if you're me. So I started out with what I thought was like a classic fantasy character, which was a brave dude. But after about 3 hours, I realized that didn't really work. So I switched it to Spunky Girl. She was brave and beautiful and curious, and when she saw a storm, she ran toward it, and when she heard something interesting, she eavesdropped. She was a pretty solid character, I thought. She lasted longer, a couple of years, until one of my early beta readers casually mentioned a phrase that will forever stick with me, which is TSTL. Your character, she said, is a little TSTL. What does that mean? It means too stupid to live. Yeah, that was rough hearing that. And I think that by then I was thinking, yeah, I'm probably better at reading stories than writing them, but the world was still pretty awful, and I still wanted people to care about that fact, to feel something. That knowledge was a weird fire in my brain, so I kept going, but the drafts were all wrong. There was a draft that had talking animals who also served as exposition machines. There was a draft where there was allegedly a war going on in the background, but you couldn't really tell. There was a draft where a parent character who had never cared about their child suddenly discovered love. After 4 years, I had a draft I felt like I could give to a reader, so I did, and I was really nervous, and the reader said my book was an unmitigated disaster. So I almost gave up after that. I'm very stubborn. But he was right. And I knew that down in my bones. This draft had no teeth. I wasn't being vulnerable in my work. I wasn't writing a story about the way war ravages a population and makes it rabid for freedom. I wasn't writing about the heartbreak of watching your loved ones be jailed. I wasn't writing about the impotence and rage felt by an occupied population. I wasn't writing a story I would want to read. My characters slipped out of their problems like greased cats, barely noticed the terrible things happening around them, and spent a lot of time explaining what was going on with stilted dialogue. Sometimes I go back and read it just to make myself feel better about what I write now. I remember someone from my old job at the Washington Post being like, "This is a waste of your time. You should come back to editing." So it was around this time that I vaguely remembered an old essay I loved from a book called The Writing Life, Authors on How They Live and Work, edited by Marie Arana. And specifically, I remember an essay by the author Michael Chabon. The essay is very typical of Mr. Chabon's work, which is to say that after you read it, you're much, much smarter. He said, and I'm condensing this a bit, literature, like magic, has always been about the handling of secrets, about the pain, the destruction, and the marvelous liberation that can result when they are revealed. Telling the truth when the truth matters the most is always a frightening prospect. If a writer doesn't give away secrets, his own or of the people he loves, the result is pallid, inanimate, a lump of earth. I read this essay and I thought, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. I'm not telling the truth. I'm too afraid to dig into how war can traumatize people, and I'm too afraid to fail to write about oppression properly. And I'm too afraid to dig into betrayal and fear and love because it might be too dark for teenagers, and that's who I'm writing for. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. Now look, I know fiction books are lies. Everyone knows that. My actual job is to sell lies. Because the things in these books might be based on things that happen in the real world, but the actual events of a fiction book, didn't really happen. There's no empire, there's no Laia, and very sadly for those of my readers who like their book characters tall, tortured, and handsome, there's no Elias. But there are people like them, and situations like them, and human struggles and woes like theirs, and that's what I had forgotten. So I first reminded myself what the truth looked like. I read old favorites like Mouse by Art Spiegelman, Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. I stopped being afraid and I started thinking about the truth. I started hunting down the truth. Truth like the police officer I interviewed who said there were cops out there who shouldn't be cops and who insisted that I read a book called On Killing by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman to understand the way soldiers are conditioned and the psychological cost on them in society. Truth like the FBI agent who told me the most difficult thing they ever faced was not a criminal, but a custody battle. I found truth in a human rights report about prisons in Syria, in articles about truth and reconciliation commissions in Tunisia, in historical record of the Spartanagoge, and in the strict social stratification of ancient Rome. So I created this soldier named Elias who hated the violence he was trained into. I scrapped my too stupid to live main character, and I created a terrified 17-year-old. I just went the other way. I was like, you know what? She's going to be way too smart to do anything dumb, like get herself killed. So I created this terrified 17-year-old character named Laia who has to claw out every drop of courage that she has. I took my toothless bad guy and I made her into a vicious commandant who also happens to be mother to a child she will never have a kind word for. And I created a single-minded, heartbroken villain who I sympathized with so deeply that I cried like a baby when I wrote his last chapter. Truth begat more truth. The longer that I wrote the Ember series, the more comfortable I grew with immersing myself in these worlds and characters and seeing them as real and searching for their truths. Fantasy allowed me to use metaphor to tell those truths, which seems deceitful, perhaps, like sneaking spinach into a shake. But I think of it, I do that to my kids, by the way, but I think of it as adding chili to chocolate or mint yogurt to a hot curry, something that, once it's there, feels like it always should have been there. The Ember series took me 13 years in total to write and publish. I began in 2007, and the last book was published in December of 2020. Yes, I am very slow, but you haven't heard the half of it yet, because fantasy was not the only thing I was working on. I was working on Burn It Down as well. It was forever cooking in the back of my mind. I called it my anger book because I would work on it whenever I was frustrated with writing or life or publishing or the world, and I would just go shout in this book. It was a very angry, very raw story. It was nothing but truth, deep truth, ugly truth, told in a safe space with no expectations, because guess what? I was never going to publish it. I was a fantasy author. So it didn't matter if it was secrets and betrayals and questions and rage, because no one was ever going to read Burn It Down, which by that time I had renamed All My Rage. Eventually, I realized that the story was interesting, important, maybe even. As soon as I realized I might want to publish it, I stalled. I couldn't work on it. Oops, sorry, I lost my place. So telling the truth is all well and good when you're using metaphor. But when you're telling a story set in the modern world that has parallels to your own life, that is much more terrifying. By this point, I knew that getting to the truth was essential. And I also had small children, so I also knew that when you want to trick someone who's kind of basic, you have to use very basic concepts. So I tricked myself by saying, this book is just for you. This allowed me to explore difficult threads without any pressure. I needed to know that if I got the story totally wrong, it was okay, because the book would never see the light of day. I also needed the freedom to draw from my life without telling the story of my life. It really was like therapy, but with fake people. I think All My Rage would have remained a personal story condemned to the recesses of my brain and computer, if not for my husband. I'd read bits and pieces of it to him, usually when I was mad, and he kept telling me, this story needs to be in the world, that other people needed to read it. He would say, you keep going back to it, like an animal worrying at an old wound. You can't be the only one who feels these things, who struggles with these things. The interesting fact about working on the same book for 15 years, other than that everyone asks you over and over and over again when you're going to be done with your book, is that you basically grow up with it. All My Rage taught me the depth of my own strength. It taught me how to channel my rage in a constructive manner. It taught me to seek truths I didn't see spoken of very much and to try to bring them to light. And it taught me to have a conversation with my younger self, one that required patience and kindness. It taught me that I had to be brave and tell the truth about these characters even if they weren't real people. Okay, so now let's go back to the question. What do we owe our young adults? What do we owe the next generation? I had to think back on the journey that I've shared with you to answer this question. The simple answer is we owe them the truth. What about when the truth is ugly? What about when the truth makes us uncomfortable or irritated? What if you write a book and it seems like people don't care about the truth that you're sharing? What about when the truth is different for different people? For some people, things are binary. For others, they are not. For some, justice is simple, and for others, it is elusive. What do you do when the truth is changing? When something that seemed like an inalienable truth years ago no longer is? I think that the answer to all of these questions lays in story. Because stories present many, many truths. They allow us to track the nuances of truth. And in presenting those truths, story creates compassion, understanding, a sense of belonging, and a sense of community. And look, there's no magical one single fictional tale that tells every human truth that every person on earth is going to relate to. The truth is multifaceted. It is conflicted and confused, kind of like myself as a young person, like many young people today. We owe our young adults the truth, but not just our truths. We need to witness their truths. We need to listen what they have to say. We need to understand how the world has changed for them from what it was for us, and I don't just mean their judginess about side parts and millennial humor. We need to be there for them as they discover the truths that will be essential in their own lives. So I say all of this for reasons that should be obvious. David touched on it earlier in a much funnier way. But people say the last few years have brought a lot of truth suppression to this country. But I am a brown woman who grew up in America in the 1980s. We have always suppressed the truth when the truth is inconvenient. Still, as a 16-year-old kid growing up in the desert, even if I wasn't hearing anything that felt like the truth to me in history class or in the news, I was able to find it in books like those that I've mentioned today. Everyone from Toni Morrison to Margaret Atwood to Ursula Le Guin, all of whom have had books banned, by the way. Thank you. We owe it to young people to fight for them to be able to read the truths offered in books like these, as well as books like The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, Internment by Samira Ahmed, They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, again, all of which have been banned or challenged in multiple locales. As we answer the question, what do we owe our young people, I hope that we will remember that banning books is banning truth. If in that truth, whatever it might be, a teenager sees themselves, they see some part of themselves, then in a way, when you ban a book, you ban a person. You are banning an honest portrayal of the beautiful diversity of our world. You are banning empathy and compassion because you're saying this thing, this story, this truth, this should not exist. No one should read it. No one should know about it. And what message does that send to someone who needs that book, because that book might be the only thing on the planet making them feel less alone? Would I have become a writer if I hadn't read Mouse or The Color Purple or The Giver? Would I have made this career where I have had thousands of students and parents and teachers tell me that seeing themselves in my work made them feel validated and less alone? Would I have been the first Muslim woman to win a National Book Award for young people's literature? Let's break it down. Every creative or artist requires some little spark of self-belief, some tiny voice that says, what I am creating is worth being created. And if I hadn't found truth in the books that I read, would I have ever found that spark or had the courage to tell the truth in my own work? I don't think so. So what of the truths that are left to write? I have heard so often in recent years, wow, so many diverse voices on these bookshelves. But it's not enough. I have stared at those bookshelves, and in places where the reading public should see a vast array of voices and faces and stories, instead they're faced with a literary Bouti's void of work that reflects the true makeup of our world. So what then of the young person who will be inspired to tell his story because of books like How It All Blew Up by Arvin Ahmadi, Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, or The Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee, again, all challenged or banned or both? How will we continue to ensure the survival of human truth if certain humans' truths aren't considered valid or important or worthy? We fight for our young people. We fight for them to have the truth. Because when we suppress that truth, whether it is because we are afraid to be vulnerable in our writing, or because we can't access books in high school libraries, we are leaving things hidden and unseen. We are allowing whole universes to lie silent because we lack courage. And our young people deserve better. Thank you.
Sabah, thank you very much. And thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this evening. As you exit tonight, we hope you'll pick up an Arizona Daily Stars Festival Guide. If you haven't done so already, you've got to stay awake a little longer, kind of do your homework. Mark your route for tomorrow, where you're going to go, the authors you're going to see over the weekend. It's going to be a great time tomorrow and Sunday. Again, thank you to the authors. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Stay safe.